everybody, and welcome back to my channel. Welcome back to Whippoorwill Holler. I'm so glad to be back with y'all. It's been a few days, I know. It's just, everything's just been so busy. There's a lot going on, as usual, with work and everything on the homestead and family and just a lot of things going on. But we try to get back with you just as quick as we can because we love being with each and every one of y'all. And I just love today's video because I'm going to be doing a video that I have been asked to do several times. People are getting to where they're making their own bread. And then I've got subscribers, friends that have been making homemade bread forever like I have. But they're also getting into making homemade bread in bread machines. And I didn't even know what a bread machine was up till a couple years ago when I did buy one because I was really interested in this. Anything that would make my life, my busy life, just a little bit easier because we do make our own bread. Now there's times that I've completely run out and I don't even have time for a bread machine and I had to stop by the store and grab me a loaf of wheat bread. It's just not the same, y'all. And we know it's not good for us. Now, there are some good store-bought breads out there, but making your own bread, especially your own sourdough bread, because we know that fermentation of that flour, and it's just, it digests in your gut better, and it's just better for you. So, I've had a lot of requests. Miss Lori, will you make some sourdough bread in the bread machine, please? So, we're going to go through that process. Now, my bread machines are older. I don't have the new updated version of bread machines. In fact, the one that I'm going to be using is, I don't even know how it is because I bought it at a flea market. So I really don't know, when it was made or how long it's been out there. But I can tell it's not updated because it don't have all the newfangled stuff on it. But that being said, it still bakes a wonderful loaf of bread, and that's really all I need. So this video is for those that are curious about sourdough bread in the bread machine, and for those that are willing to use a bread machine because it's just going to make their life so much easier. Yes, Miss Lori bakes bread in the oven. Miss Lori bakes bread in the wood cook stove oven, but she also bakes bread in the bread machine. I have a very, very busy life, and we would rather eat homemade bread than store-bought. So we just do whatever we can to make sure that it happens one way or another. And if I can come in and I can make me a loaf of bread, I can put it in there and walk away from it and go about my business with my evening chores and supper and everything, and make sure that I've got bread for the next day or the next week. Just whatever works, I think is wonderful. And a bread machine, it was a good investment. Now, I have ordered me a new one. I had some Amazon points left, and I thought, what do I need to spend these points on? And I thought, I'm going to get me a new bread machine because I've got these that are older and they don't have all the newer stuff on it, and some of the new settings on the new bread makers are especially for sourdough. So we're going to be making a loaf of sourdough bread in the bread machine. Now, making sourdough bread in the bread machine and not using yeast, just your sourdough starter, and that's what we're doing. It's going to take longer because it's going to have to go through several hours of a rise. But that being said, once you put your ingredients, and you'll see here in a minute, in your bread machine, you get them ingredients in there. It's not very many ingredients to make this wonderful tasting bread. You're going to let it do it. You don't have to take it out of the bread machine. It stays right in there for hours. And by the end of the day, you're going to have a beautiful loaf of sourdough bread that you made with the help of this wonderful bread machine. My sourdough starter is very active. We'll talk about that a little bit. And y'all know that the starter that I'm using is the one we started. I believe it's the 5th of February. Y'all may have to go back and look, but I'm pretty sure that's right. So if y'all started your sourdough starter with me that day and you still got it, oh, I think that's wonderful. Now, there were times when I thought that I kind of I didn't neglect it, but I thought was something, I'm going to have to really, I'm going to have to feed it more every 6 hours or something. That's what I would do. And now I've got a beautiful starter and it's right where I want it. So, anyways, that being said, we're going to get started and we're going to make us a wonderful loaf of sourdough bread in the bread machine using only our sourdough starter with no yeast. I'm going to take you step by step, and it's not that it's going to be hard, because it's not. Miss Lori don't do anything that's difficult. You know me, I'm easy peasy. So, but it's just that it's going to take several hours of rise because you're not using commercial yeast. So, if you want that beautiful loaf of bread, that's just what we're going to do. And like I said, once I put it in that bread machine, I don't have to touch that dough, not one more time, till it's baked and I take it out of that pan. That'll be the next time I touch that dough. So it's just a wonderful thing. So let's get started, and I'm going to tell you, I've got a house full of family and friends, so you might see and hear things going on in the background, but just know that it's a busy house, but we're still going to make us some bread. So let's get started. Here's our sourdough starter that we started around the 5th of February, I'm pretty sure. Now, I use this starter in several recipes. I also discarded some when I knew I wouldn't be using it in several days. I kept it fed. There were times that I even fed it every 6 hours. And this is what the product that I have now. And it is a very active, very beautiful starter. Now, I fed my starter the night before because I knew the next day I was going to be making bread. So I fed my starter right before I went to bed. I fed it a half a cup of rye flour and about a fourth a cup of water. Okay, let's get started getting our bread mixed up. We're going to put about 1 1/4 cups of warm water into our bread pan. I've got a fourth a cup of melted butter. I've got people talking to me over here in the background, so I'm a little bit, you can see I kind of stopped, but we're fixing to get back with our recipe here. So we got 1 1/4 cups of warm water and our fourth a cup of melted butter. I've got family and friends here at the house, so I'm kind of preoccupied. I've got 4 cups of bread flour. I like to use bread flour when I'm using my bread machine. It just seems to make a really good loaf of bread. Now, there's times that I don't have bread flour and I have to use just regular all-purpose flour. I'm going to put 2 tablespoons of sugar and a half a tablespoon of salt. And if you don't want to use sugar, you can use honey. I usually use honey in most all my bread recipes, but I'm using sugar today. Now I've got my fed starter here. It's good and bubbly. I'm going to put just about a half a cup of my sourdough starter in here in my bread pan. You won't need no more than that. So that's all the ingredients we got to put in there. We're just going to stick our bread pan back in our bread machine. And this is the bread machine that I got at the flea market for $8. And it's not real fancy. It doesn't have a lot of different kind of different things to do with it. It's just plain Jane. And this is what it looks like. This is all the layers of our ingredients. The sourdough starter on top. We're just going to shut the lid. Now, the way I'm going to do this is, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put it on basic bread. And all I want it to do is I want it to stir my ingredients. Then I want it to knead for so long. And then I'm going to shut the machine completely off. And this is what it looks like after it's stirred and kneaded it for a while. And now I turn my machine off. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to shut the lid. And I'm going to let it sit here now for about 4 to 6 hours. So I'm just going to go on about my daily business and let this sit and proof. So here we are about 4 hours later. I'm not going to have time for 6 hours, but I do have time for 4. So there it is after 4 hours. And that's how it's proofed up. And it looks and feels really good. So we're going to shut the lid. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my #1 setting for just basic bread. Now I've got all kinds of settings on here. There's for French bread, and of course just your regular dough if you just want to make like pizza dough or something. But there's nothing fancy about it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it on 1.5 pound loaf, about a medium dark crust, and we're going to turn it on. Just basic bread, and we're just going to let it do its thing. So what it's going to do now that I put it on my basic bread is going to stir it. It's going to, just like if you were punching your dough down from the first rise, it's going to stir it. And then it's going to knead it again. And then it's going to, after kneading it, it's going to just sit there for a while. Then it's going to start baking. So, all I got to do is push it back on my counter and walk away again. And in 3 hours and 18 minutes, I'm going to have bread. So here it is, 3 hours later. And my house smells wonderful. You can see already how that bread, how it rose. It rose all the way to the top of my bread pan. It's good and brown. It done a really good job. Sounds hollow, so I know it's done. But it does have a little bit, I'll turn it around and show you. It kind of separated a little bit on that one side. But no matter, it still is going to be a beautiful loaf of bread. I think it really done really good. My sourdough starter done a wonderful job. So while it's still hot, I'm going to get it out of the bread pan. Be careful because it's still really hot. You just got to shake it kind of hard. Now there will be a crack where the paddle was, but that's okay. It's not a very big hole or anything. It doesn't hurt nothing or bother anything. It don't bother me at all. And you can look see the pretty color of the crust. It turned out really good. I'm really, really proud of this loaf of bread. Even with the little ugly crack, it's still a pretty loaf of bread. I'm just so proud of how it rose. So, we've got some good sandwich bread going on here for the rest of the week. Now, yeah, it took a little time. When you're not using commercial yeast, you're just using your sourdough starter. You've got that little time of letting it sit there and proof for a while. So what we're going to do is I usually let it cool off quite a bit before I try to slice my bread. But I just don't have that kind of time. It's getting late, y'all. And this stuff, it's still really hot. The steam is coming out of it. And it is hot. That steam burnt my hand. But I want y'all to look. Look at how pretty the inside of that bread is. It is tender. It is soft. Even as hot as it is, it's cutting really, really good. This is just made a really wonderful sourdough sandwich bread. In fact, I think it's tall enough that it's not going to fit in my toaster. So I'll have to toast it on top of the stove in a skillet, which is just fine because Mr. Brown would rather have it that way. You can see there's just a few hints of little holes, little hollow holes here and there. But, well, friends, we did toast us some good old sourdough bread. We're eating it with some chicken fried steak and gravy and some fried eggs. Dip that toast in that gravy. It's some good eating. Y'all follow my recipe for this sourdough bread in the bread machine. It really does work. It makes a beautiful loaf of sourdough sandwich bread. Mr. Brown approved. So I hope y'all love this recipe. I hope y'all try it. I know a lot of y'all wanting to make some sourdough bread in your bread machine. We'll see y'all in a few days. We love y'all. God bless.